name's Roger Allen. I have the honour this year to be the president of PASEF, the Pennsylvania Association of Senior Emeritus Faculty. We are concerned about the interests of the retirees, the faculty retirees at the university. We habitually hold lectures such as this. This is one of the two special lectures we hold each year. This is our fourth occasion. We also have a speakers bureau who offer our own services as speakers to the various institutions in the Delaware Valley, and we also hold workshops for those who are in the process of planning for retirement each year. I would warmly recommend to you that if you haven't done so, you look at our website where you will find the world famous Hitchhiker's Guide to Retirement, which we have put together and which is a source of all information, well, maybe not all information, but a lot of information about retirement. But you're not here to listen to me today, and I wish now to hand over the microphone to Professor Paul Shaman, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Roger. It's a pleasure to welcome our speaker today. Jane Golden is the founder and executive director of Mural Arts Philadelphia. She is a graduate of Stanford University, where she studied fine arts and political science. And after graduation, she moved to Los Angeles, where she created a number of large, well-received murals in the Los Angeles beach areas. And she was co-founder and director of the Los Angeles Public Art Foundation. And then in 1985, she moved to the Philadelphia area. And in 1996, she was appointed the founding executive director of the Mural Arts program in Philadelphia, the appointment by Mayor Wilson Good. The program was designed to fight graffiti in the city by giving the graffiti artists a more productive artistic outlook. And she quickly began working with at-risk teens, and together they began to paint murals in the city. And altogether now there are 3,800 murals of public art through collaborations with community-based organizations, city agencies, nonprofits, schools, the private sector, and philanthropies. Jane Golden has a Master of Fine Arts degree from Rutgers University. She has received honorary degrees from a number of schools in the Philadelphia area. She's also received numerous awards for her work, including the Philadelphia Award, the Visionary Woman Award from Moore College of Art, the 2012 Governor's Award for Innovation in the Arts, and others. She's been an important voice and organizer within the community, and the Philadelphia Mural Arts program, through her leadership, actively engages with critical issues in the area. Please join me in welcoming Jane Golden as our speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's delightful to be here. My second job is I teach at Penn, so I love this institution. So I think I spent a lot of my adult life thinking about cities. And at Mural Arts, I think our role is to stretch art as far as it can go. And when we think we have gone far enough, I think it's our responsibility to go further. I took a summer program at Harvard a few years ago, and one of the professors said, he was talking about big global nonprofits, he said the best nonprofits are the ones that are both aspirational and highly pragmatic. And I thought that was so well said, I practically jumped up and down in my chair, because I think those are indeed the paths that we walk. So I want to, here's our mission statement, but I want to give you a little history of our organization, because I think context is everything, and how we got here is really interesting. And I have a lot of gratitude to many people along the way who supported us and believed in innovation and the arts. So I was, as you heard, a double major at Stanford. I was an artist who thought I'd go to law school. I moved to LA, and I saw like these glorious murals. And I had parents who loved the art created during the WPA years. So I grew up looking at Ben Shahn and Thomas R. Benton. So you can imagine, so when I got to LA and saw these beautiful murals, I was like, oh my God, look at these murals. So, my paid professors, they said, get a job that's really boring, get a studio and just paint and don't go to law school, whatever you do. So I was like, okay. They were telling my parents that they're like, oh, wow, that's great advice. So glad you went to Stanford. You're gonna get a boring job and paint. So I did all those things, but I was in my studio, I felt like anxious, I felt like sort of isolated, and I had a yearning to connect with the larger world. So I was coming home one day and I read about an organization that gave out grants to mural painters. So I was like, oh my God, that could be me. So I applied and I drove the city of LA crazy. I called them every day for 3 months. And finally I got this little grant. They called me, they said, we hope we never hear from you again. I'm like, okay, I get it, I'm a pest. It's my technique, the city government here in Philly too. I painted my first mural in Santa Monica. And it was like this thrilling experience because I believe like art should be accessible to everyone. I love galleries and museums. My mom was a very accomplished artist, but I just don't think art should reside exclusively behind those walls. And standing on the corner in Santa Monica, I started talking to people about neighborhood issues, community concerns. And then when my first mural was finished, people were like, oh, this is like so exciting, you should dedicate the mural. It's a funny little story. So I said, oh, that's a good idea. So they said, get someone famous to dedicate it. I said, I'm like 22 from New Jersey. I don't know anybody famous. So they said, well, Jane Fonda lives down the street. So I'm like, oh, great. So I go down the street, I'm totally covered with paint, and I knock on her door, and she answered. I'm like, oh my God, Jane Fonda. She said, hello. I said, hello, my name's Jane Gold. She goes, I know who you are. I've seen you painting. She said, I'd love to see young women at work. You're moving that scaffolding, you're lifting paint. I'm like, that's right. She said, what can I do? So I said, would you cut the ribbon at the dedication? She goes, isn't there anything else I can do? Now I joke with my colleagues, because of course now I'd ask for a donation. But then I said, oh, you could bring friends. I didn't know what to say. I was sort of intimidated. It was Jane Fonda. So anyway, so she came, and it was very thrilling and exciting. And then I did other murals. I worked with kids on probation. Then I became really, really sick. I have lupus. So I came back east. I grew up in Margate, New Jersey. And I was coming up to Philly to go to Hahnemann Hospital for treatments. And I read about Philadelphia. You know, here it was. Philly had a new mayor, our first African-American mayor. And Philly, evidently, I sort of knew this, but it had a huge graffiti crisis. And Wilson Goodman made a campaign promise he was going to reduce graffiti. And so in this article, this article was about anti-graffiti. Buried in one paragraph, it said that it came to his attention a lot of the young people loved art, and he was going to hire someone who could work with the graffiti writers. So I just thought, oh my God, that could be my job. So I went home, I wrote a letter to Wilson Good. Dear Wilson Good, it's funny, it was before email. I feel like it was 1,000 years ago. So I mailed the letter, and I got a call from someone from the Good administration, like 3 weeks later. This man named Oliver Franklin, he was head of arts and culture. He said, I know the woman who gave you your first grant to do a mural in Los Angeles, and I called her, and she said, Jane Golden will drive you crazy, but you should hire her without a doubt. That was a good snapshot. So he asked me to come up. He sent me to talk to Tim Spencer, who is next to Wilson Good. Tim was the new executive director of the Anti-Graffiti Network. Tim looked at my resume and he goes, look, I want to say it's a new program. You're going to have about, should you choose to accept the job, your pay is $12,000 a year. Your title will be field representative. It was strange. He said, we're not sure what to do with an artist. And you'll have like 1,000 graffiti writers. And your job is to rechannel the negative energy of graffiti writing to something positive. It was pretty big. So I said, I'll take it. Like, I didn't need to hear anymore. I just was so excited. So he said, okay, that's great. And then he walked me down the hall, and we walked through the main office, which was totally pandemonium. Like, think about police dramas you watch on television or in movies. It was like detectives, police officers, graffiti writers writing in the hallway. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, my whole life I've loved reading crime novels. Now I'm living in one, clearly. But I'm like, okay, this is good. Because anti-graffiti was so exciting. Why is that? Because the seat of power was open to kids from every neighborhood of the city. Because Wilson Good recognized that graffiti was a social epidemic. Because he put $6 million on the table to do something about it. You all know that our elected officials here and everywhere can talk about problems all they want. Unless they're going to fund it and actually do something about it, it is white noise. It is meaningless. Wilson Goode did something. And he flew in the face of the naysayers and the cynics who said graffiti is just never going away. There's nothing you can do about it. It is an intractable problem. So he said, no, I'm going to work with the kids who are writing on walls, and together we're going to clean up the city of Philadelphia. And you see why everyone looks so happy there? They are, I love this picture. They are swearing they're never going to write on walls for the rest of their life. Which of course wasn't true. But what I saw was that young people that I met, and I was so lucky and privileged, I want to be clear, to have this job. When I look back at anti-graffiti, it was like getting 3 graduate degrees. I had extraordinary access to every neighborhood in the city. I got to meet young people. I got to meet block captains, community leaders, and incredible young people. That's why I say it was a privilege. If I had come to the city cold and tried to do murals in neighborhoods, where would I have gotten? How would we have been able to develop a complex, robust community methodology without people mentoring us about how to do it right? And we learned that by being on the ground and being respectful. So the first thing that happened is I was given an assistant. That was my assistant, Tran, and he worked for a mass transit agency. And he worked for SEPTA, actually. Most of you are probably from Philly. So I said, what do you do for SEPTA? He said, I do light maintenance in the tunnels. I'm like, light maintenance? He said, he pulled out all his keys. I can get into every tunnel. Later, he showed me where he did light maintenance, and there were these extraordinary graffiti murals. So I'm like, oh my God. So I said to Tran, okay, what I need you to do is introduce me to graffiti writers. I need to understand why they write on walls in order to design a program that is palatable to them. So he started to do that. We started to offer programs at community centers, recreation centers. And then it occurred to me that graffiti writers didn't mind heights, they liked working outdoors, and I found out through Tran that many of them absolutely loved art. One night, there was a knock on my door, I opened the door, and there were 10 guys, young men, in my door, and they introduced themselves to me as Cool Earl, Disco Duck, Knife, Pez, Cat. I'm like, oh my God. Because we used to have Most Wanted posters in our office. It was sort of funny, actually. Well, Most Wanted for, defacing these properties. And so I realized they were on the Most Wanted posters. So of course I'm like, I err on the side of being solicitous, it's my nature. So I invited them in. So they came in and they said, and Tran knew where I lived because I would always stop there for art supplies. So they came in and they looked at my art books and I said, oh my God, look at all those art books. I said, help yourselves. So I started passing out art books. One young man stands up and he goes, hello, my name is Knife. So I could feel my spine stiffen. I was like, hello. I know if it was Mr. Knife or Knife. So anyway, so he said, I have a question for you. I said, good, ask away. He said, I want to know what you think about the color fields in Mark Rothko's work. And I really love William de Kooning, but my all-time favorite is Andy Warhol, and we would like to know what you think about these artists. And I said, okay, so you all just told me you dropped out of school in 10th grade. So I want to know how you know about the abstract painters. So he goes in his backpack and he pulls out the magazine Art in America. And he goes, well, I've been stealing this since I was 10. So I'm like, that's curious. And then they were all holding these black books, and I was like, they were holding them like this. I'm like, look, I'm not the police. Open up your books. When they did, I saw these extraordinary drawings. They had been drawing from comic books since they were young. They had an intuitive sense of design and color and anatomy. And so I was able to talk them eventually into signing up for the Anti-Graffiti Network. They were very resistant at first and could not use spray paint. They all felt like they were going to be Keith Haring. And I was like, look, here's a wake-up call. Only a handful of artists will make it in America every year who can rely solely on their art. Where will you be when you're 25? You have dropped out of high school. This is a fact. And here we have a big city mayor who's committed resources to working with you, and you could do something artists all over America would love. You could get paid to paint. Because anti-graffiti was structured. You took the pledge, then you did volunteer work, you were assigned to me. Most people wanted to work on the art projects, and I very rapidly had to set up a program of study, which we did throughout the city. And then I thought, we are doing murals in Philly. So I went to Wilson Goode, I went to Tim Spencer, and they were like, sure, if you think that, that would be good, but you also have to have programs. I'm like, no problem. And what we could do, which was so fantastic, is we could employ young people, thousands of young people. At the time that we were the Anti-Graffiti Network, from 1984 to 1996, we employed probably 25,000 young people. We had summer programs with 3,000 kids painting murals. 3,000 young people. Now, most of this was government money. So I'm a proponent of government money. I think it should be used effectively and efficiently, but it can be the first money in, and you can leverage it, and you can stretch it, and you can extend it, and you can make an impact and help clean up the city, which is exactly what happened. So we started to deliver art in 1985 as a city service. And what do I mean? It means we drove around and asked people what they would like on walls that were completely defaced. And first people said, we're not interested. We would like housing, and we would like jobs, and our neighborhood has struggled for 30 years, and why do you think art is going to mean anything? But eventually people said to us, when we asked them, well, what do you think? People said, well, no one ever asked us that. Things are done to us or not done, and the only visual stimulation we have are billboards advertising alcohol and tobacco. And we were like, well, that can change. What do you want? And people said, well, we went to Africa. We went to Mount Kilimanjaro. And that's what we wanted, 20th and Diamond. And see, if you had met me in 1985, 86, 87, and you said, Jane Golden, what do you think that art can do in neighborhoods that have been struggling? I would have said, well, they would beautify the environment. They'd be good for young people. They'd learn art skills. But I wouldn't have told you that it would be a generative kind of experience. I wouldn't have told you that it was catalytic. But that's what I saw before my very eyes. I saw the mural become a beacon and a focal point and a sign that people cared, things could change, and that government could be effective. And that was so thrilling. So something like this, the mural went up and people saw the lot that was filled with trash and crap piles and said, we're not going to take it, and that's right. But it wasn't us doing something to somebody. This was about co-creation. It was about collaboration. It was going into communities and knowing that people who lived there had ideas and that we needed to step back. I didn't live at 20th and Diamond. I shouldn't dictate what goes on that wall. I wouldn't want that in my community. And because of that, I think the murals became the love because there was such a sense of ownership about the work. You know, we talk about the broken windows theory. Well, good things lead to good things. So people would say to us, oh my God, the pothole needs to be fixed, or the street light, or this or that, and we were always going to other people in city government. And my former boss was always saying, a group of artists called the Streets Commissioner complaining about the pothole or the street light, is that you? And we were like, yes, it's us. Because we were like, oh my God, we're working with the community. But it struck me at the time that we needed to not just be, we needed to be respectful, collaborative, and highly intentional. And that's what I learned. I learned that you needed to treat working with city government as an art form. That you had to build allies. That you had to be responsive. And that what we want people to think in our city about the Mural Arts program is that this is a program that matters. This is a program that is effective. And so if you look at us, there are 53 employees, 10 of us are city employees. But everybody at the Mural Arts program feels like a public servant working on behalf of citizens of Philadelphia, and that's exactly as it should be. And then we kept doing work, one project after the next project, like the Dr. J. Mural, look at this, it's a beacon. This was painted in 1989. And what I love is that you can't believe, in the beginning, how many cynics there were. Oh, those walls are going to get graffiti. That will never stay clean. Well, guess what? After 4,000 murals, you know how many have been defaced? Maybe 12. Maybe 12. That is so few. And I remember what this looked like. It was a dumping ground in front of the site, but it never reverted to that. And then we became the Mural Arts program. So anti-graffiti closed down, and suddenly we're the Mural Arts program. It's 1997 now. What happened is I went to Ed Rendell. I applied to law school, got into law school. My brother's a lawyer, thankfully, and he said to me, don't go to law school. So I'm like, what? Like I took the LSAT, all this stuff. So he said, you should run an art program for the city. So I said, well, there isn't one. He said, well, go start one. So I went to talk to Ed Rendell, and he agreed. I was so happy. And he said, where do you want to be? I said, the Department of Recreation, because Mike DeBerardinis, who is now our managing director, is so visionary. He said, I want to work for him. So Ed Rendell thought about it. He called us back up. He said, okay, come up with a name. We're like, the Mural Arts program. He goes, Jane Golden, you're in charge. I'm like, ah. So I deferred law school. But then I realized I'm not in charge of much. It's like when you're little and you have a spy club. You're the president, the vice president, you're the treasurer, right? But we have like 10 cents. So most of the money had been divided up. So we had like $100,000. So I'm like, So I noticed that Mike DeBerardinis was raising private money to open up swimming pools. So I'm like, yes, we can do that. So we formed a board, got a 501c3, started leveraging funds, And then I realized, you know what? We are a pro art program. We're going to hire emerging and established artists. We're going to go 100 miles an hour, and we're going to open our doors to all kids, because every child in the city of Philadelphia deserves to have access to art. Period. Non-negotiable. Let's move on. Stop having the conversation about the importance of art, right? So that's exactly what we did. We flew into action. And then we started doing projects that were complicated, like the Peace Wall in Grace Ferry, where all communication between blacks and whites had shut down. There was a murder, a beating. And we said, we're going to do a peace wall. And people said, you are so naive. And whenever anyone says no to us, we just ignore them. So I worked with Lillian Ray, an awesome deputy mayor, and we went door to door. She's black, I'm obviously white, right? We were a great team. And we talked to people for like a year. Finally we got people to meet with us. We got a consensus. People wanted hands. We used real people's hands. We photographed the hands. We digitized the image and projected on the wall. Why I show you this image is because the dedication was the most integrated event down there. And what I think it did more than anything is it shifted the conversation. You know, it's very clear, racism is not dead, and it's not dead in Grace Ferry. But what it did was profound, because people came together and were able to momentarily rise above their day-to-day squabbles and think about the greater good. And I love it when block captains and community leaders come talk to my Penn class, because I love them to talk about a shift in conversation. So that was an exciting project. And then we were like, just on the go, right? So we did these big projects. And then here in the early 2000s, we started to get more ambitious and think about not just the mural, but the lot and the block, and started working with community development corporations and unusual sites, and working with neighborhoods in a deeper capacity, and connecting people to city council and other sort of efforts to make the community healthy. Like, we're always thinking about what else can we do here. So we had this great foundation in the early years of Mural Arts. And then in 2004, 5, and 6, under Mayor John Street, we were made part of the Division of Social Services, and our work quadrupled. Under Mayor Nutter, again, and now under Mayor Kennedy. So 5 mayors. Our budget is 30% for the city, and the rest we raise. Foundations, corporations, individuals, and a little earned income. And I'm going to take you through the different departments at Mural Arts, so you get a snapshot of what we're doing, what we're up to, and how we think about the city, because we are on a mission. So art education, this is project-based learning. We want young people to have an idea and bring that idea to fruition. We are creating the leaders, thought leaders of tomorrow, and there's just no doubt about it. I think kids in our city, for the most part, have incredible potential. They don't see it, sometimes others don't see it, and shame on us adults for not creating a more rigorous system for them. One thing that struck me when I first came to Philly was that the bar was low, and I say raise it, right? We need to offer young people every opportunity and option possible. So you could look at this as a truck, and you could wrap it. So our young people wrapped a fleet of recycling trucks. They studied recycling, they learned Photoshop, and they learned about a city issue, and they became advocates for recycling when Mayor Nutter introduced recycling in the city. Here they worked with Sonia Sanchez, a renowned poet. Her legacy in part is about peace. And so their legacy became about peace. And they started working with her, 500 young people working with Sonia Sanchez, learning haiku, thinking about poetry, thinking about spoken word, and reclaiming civic space in the city. And then we worked with a group of young people from Juarez, Mexico, and from Philadelphia, and we did this piece, which is about deportation and immigration and its impact on families and how they are torn apart. We want our kids to be part of the larger world. And here we work, this is just an example of a wonderful project at 13th and Race, and we bring in great teaching artists, we have a faculty, we do a lot of professional development. And we also work with young people who have totally fallen through the cracks. 1,000 kids a year work with the Mural Arts program. They're at provider agencies, the New Study Center, St. Gabriel's Hall. Our dream is that when young people come out of the juvenile justice system, that they continue to work with us. So we create a pathway. So you come in and you learn the foundation program. Then you go into emerging muralists. Then you can go into an apprenticeship, internship, or an entrepreneurial program. What we want is for kids to stay with us for a long period of time. What I learned at the Anti-Graffiti Network is that programs need to be sustained and substantive. Those two ingredients are critical. I don't know why we think a 4-week program is going to change a life. It is not. It's just not. We need just a wake-up call here. So we also have a scholarship program, we have an alumni group, and you know, a very large percentage of our teaching artists started out as kids in our program and are now considering careers in education. That is great, and we wrap a train, and this is all about brain science. And then this is about the solar system. And we have a new, so we work after school in the summer, and now we work during the school day where we bring together math, science, and art. And that is exciting. And here, the McMichael School, which looked like a prison, is totally transformed. It's all about the universe, the solar system. There's a key. You walk around it. It's like a learning lab. It's a hub of innovation. And shouldn't our city schools look like this? Shouldn't our young people be able to walk into an environment that is beautiful and inspiring? And it can be. This is not brain surgery. We can do this. And then we take on issues that are related to city issues, right? So when the city started the bike share program, our kids became advocates for bicycling. And they wrap bicycles. You can rent a bicycle that is wrapped by us. I'm just saying, they're very pretty. You should be on the lookout for them. They're the most popular bikes that get rented. We have data about that. And then we work with well-known artists from around the world. This is Mad C, started out as a graffiti writer, and now she is a very well-known artist doing major commissions around the world. This is before, and this is after, a brand new project our young people did at Esperanza School in North Philly. Just transformative. And then public art and civic engagement. We do big projects around the city. And we work with a variety of artists. We work with 250 artists every year. We're now working in mosaic, stained glass, fresco. This is our Restorative Spaces program, where we feel that schools look like prisons and our rec centers are in terrible shape. We know we're very proud to be in a city where Mayor Kenny has introduced the whole concept of rebuild, because we understand that our rec centers need to be beautiful and inspiring as well. And so that's a brand new project where we work with the Trust for Public Land, the school district, the water department, and Park and Recreation. This is a new project we did that's a tribute to Richard Allen. And then we also look at criminal justice. This is a very important part of Mural Arts. We work with people in prison and we work with people coming home. In prison, we work a lot with Graterford Prison. We work with men, most of whom are lifers, and we work with crime victims and victims advocates, and we did a series called Healing Walls. This looks like that one person did it, but hundreds of people did this. And what's so extraordinary about this series is that when we started out, people agreed to work on this project, but no one really wanted to work together. Everybody wanted to claim they had more pain. And what we wanted them to do was to rise up and think collectively about the price we pay when crime happens in our city. And it is happening, and it's happening now a lot. You read the paper, you hear about violence. What about the impact and consequences of violent crime, and what role can we all play? People in prison, people who are home, victims of crime. When violence happens, our narratives are destroyed, and if we can all put it back together again, how wonderful would that be? And that's what we try to do. We work at Graterford Prison. The men there mostly are from Philadelphia, and they said something 10 years ago to me that just stuck with me. They said, our lives went dark at age 10. And I realized they are not there in a vacuum. They have kids and grandkids. They're connected to communities. And if we're ever going to break the cycle of poverty in the city of Philadelphia, which is 25%, I think, then we need to think out of the box. We need to come to some kind of agreement that our traditional interventions are going to fail us. They just will, they do, right? So we have to always embrace innovation and creativity and just think differently. So I love the fact that the men in the prison are impacting their kids in a different way, because the young people go around the city and see things, beauty that their dads have done. Because now this is a formal work program where the men create 24 major projects every year for communities and neighborhoods. You ask how? We work on a parachute club, we work in the prison, we work in hospital senior centers, and we roll it up, and we take it out, and we put it on walls, and it's there for everyone to see. And then we decided that wasn't enough to work behind the walls. We need to work with people coming home, so we started working with young men who have been in and out of the criminal justice system. We work with what's called the Youth Violence Reduction Partnership. These are young men who are most at risk to either be affected by a violent crime or commit a violent crime. They have a street worker and they have us. It's a job for 9 months. They get to impact the city. They learn building skills, landscaping, and mural making, and then they reclaim civic spaces. And then we have a jobs developer on staff, and we employ people and then figure out what their next step is for employment when they move on. And here's before, and here's after. So it shows you this is impactful. And can you imagine, like, you've been in and out of the system, suddenly you have an employer who's not ambivalent, who cares about you and is committed to making sure you have opportunities. And you do this. And what happens is that people drive by on a daily basis and say, thank you. Oh my God, this is beautiful. Oh my goodness, I love it. And that kind of feedback reinforces to the men and the women that their lives matter. You know, we talk about grit, and resilience. Sometimes that has to be developed over time. And that's what we try to do, establish in people a sense of self-worth so they can resist the seduction of the streets. And then we worked with Shepard Fairey, who did a series of murals about people who are doing great things with their lives but have been incarcerated, because he asked the viewer, can we forgive? And Amira Muhammad had been in the women's prison, came out, was in our guild program, and now she's studying architecture. Yay. Love her. And then we also work in the visiting room at the men's prison, and it's called a program that's called Fathers and Children Together, where the men and their children create art together, and we work with a psychologist, the dads and the kids, building bonds. Sometimes these relationships are starting for the first time, and this is very exciting that we're doing this work. And then we also do work, this is about the policies in place that people coming out of prison have to grapple with, that sometimes causes them to go back inside. And our Porch Light program is the work we do with the Department of Behavioral Health. It's about overcoming stigma. It's about connecting people to their treatment plan. It's about acknowledging that people who are struggling with trauma, addiction, homelessness, mental health issues, it's often in the shadows. And that's where you stay. How alienating and isolating is it? And the former mental health commissioner in the city of Philadelphia, who just left for a job in Washington, he believed in our work. He said we were an alternative therapeutic model. And he's a big thinker. He said, we send people from the city into neighborhoods and we say, get treatment. The city offers these things, and people say, I don't trust the city. This has happened 10 years ago. And he said, people don't trust us. So we took a chance on us. We started building up a program, and we did one mural after another, and then he assigned us this project. This is a methadone clinic in North Philadelphia. I wish I had a before shot to show you, because it was gray and gloomy and graffiti covered. And we took over the basement, we turned it into an artist studio, started working with people right before group therapy. And the therapist said, you know what, people are staying with their recovery longer. So we got a little grant to work with these evaluators from the Yale Medical School. They said, you're on to something. We took that data, we applied to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, we got a $500,000 grant, we leveraged that, turned it into $1.5 million. It's now our Porch Light program, where we're at provider agencies every year offering people public art making year-round. I love it when people say to me, I no longer feel like an addict, I feel like an artist. We have to shift the paradigm. And then we started working with new immigrant communities in South Philly. We worked with people from Burma, Bhutan, Nepal, Cambodia, and we took over a hub space. We're doing this more and more. Go to Southeast by Southeast. In fact, I hope you do. We have sales every year. We offer ESL, cooking, sewing, dance, social services, mural making, and we tapped into a community of extraordinary women who are weavers. We got them a grant from the Commerce Department. They're off and running, starting their own business. Everything we do should be generative. Everything we do should lead to something else, to something else, to something else. It has nothing to do with us, but it's everything to do with their lives. That's our responsibility to people. And then we did a bus, the 47. It went up and down the 47 route, talking about all the great communities. On the back, there was a sign that said, we are all migrating together. And then we worked with vets. This is called Our City, Our Vets. And we worked with vets returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. Here we worked with 1,000 people in recovery. And we worked with the Broad Street Ministry. And here's a project that we just did not too long ago. And this one has QR codes in it, because we partnered with the music therapist, so that when you click on it, you actually hear an original composition that was created by the men and women in this program. And then we just opened up a hub space in the heart of Kensington, where the heroin epidemic, opioid crisis is at its height. And we have 4 great partners. We offer counseling as far as treatment. We go for if you need shelter, housing advice, and we offer all kinds of art making. And we are there for the long run. It is a safe space for people where they can begin to recognize their self-worth. And then our special projects, again, big projects, big public art projects, 85,000 square feet at the International Airport. And I think what I love about this, and this is a model for me personally, because I know who worked on this, people coming out of prison, kids in our art ed program, people from our behavioral health program. So it's like, there's a paradigm shift in how public art is made, that it doesn't have to be made by a lone practitioner. And then we work with different artists. This is Steve Powers, who is he lives in New York City, but he grew up in Philly. He was one of the most notorious graffiti writers. He did a series of 60 second-story walls, mostly you see from the L train. And then we wrap color around 61 buildings at Germantown and Lehigh. We work with 2 artists who have been painting in the favelas of Rio. And then we work with Katerina Grossa, who's an artist from Berlin, and she did 7 miles of color along the Amtrak corridor. This is a new one. We work often with developers around the city, and we're creating pools of risk capital where we're bringing new artists, women artists, artists of color into the mix, because all too often public art making historically has been a fairly elite profession, and we want to open the doors and value access. We think that's so important. These are brand new. And international ties. Oh, Prince Charles and Camilla, they came to see us. That was fun. We worked in Ireland. We did this project collaboratively with people in Haiti. This was a project we did connected to the Pope's visit, and he signed it. That was exciting. We worked with an artist from Cuba, Salvador Gonzalez. It was extraordinary. We sent our young people. We had a team go to Cuba recently. We think it's really important for young people to be like ambassadors. And major exhibitions, every 2 years we do like a biennale here in Philly. So this was called Open Source, where we had great artists look at our methodology and create work based on different issues that we're tackling. This was in the City Hall courtyard, and then we did this project around the DNC. And then Monument Lab is a new project, you might have read about it. It's a public art and public history exhibition happening right now in 5 of the center city squares and 5 neighborhood parks, where we are asking Philadelphians, what is an appropriate monument for the current city of Philadelphia? I feel that we should have the courage, the desire to have a conversation about how we're represented, and public art should provide us with a safe space to have that discourse. And I feel very proud that we're doing this and doing it right now when the national conversation is about public history and about memory. Here's a monument that is wrapped. It's a war memorial, and so people can now see themselves. This is actually a tribute to the lack of women in public art. There are 1,000 sculptures in the city of Philadelphia. Only 2 are about women. That's Hank Willis Thomas, who's a renowned artist, Sharon Hayes, Karen Olivier. This is an artist who's a Native artist, a Native American artist, as he's talking about the Lenape tribe. It's a beautiful, beautiful quote. And what's next for us? We're doing a tribute to Ed Bradley. And part of this project is really inspiring young people to think about how important journalism now, probably more important than ever, as our system of checks and balances. We took kids up to the 60-minute studio, and they met with all kinds of producers and directors. It was fantastic. Leslie Stahl painted with us. She's very good. That was exciting. There's a new project going up in the spring. It's on the AT&T building. I'm a wall hunter, and I love this wall forever. We can't believe it's happening, but it's going to be beautiful. And a new mural we're doing, which is about children and trauma. And then we're doing a big project with a very famous artist named Swoon. We're working with moms who are addicted and their children. And then finally, this is the last image. This is called Float Lab, and we're working with the head of the architecture department at MIT, and we're going to, in 2 years, be creating a floating laboratory performing arts space. It will be docked at Bartram's Garden. It will provide young people from an underserved community with a state-of-the-art laboratory to study the river and ecology. And at night, it will be a platform for performance, both for the neighbors and for people from all over the city. It will be both beautiful and practical. And so when I talk about being aspirational and pragmatic, that is representative of both. There is a saying that I love, and that saying is, hope is believing in spite of the evidence and watching the evidence change. Watching the evidence change. That has been the privilege and the honor of doing this work for 30 years, and we are determined to push forward and be driven by both the power of art and the vision of people from this great city. Thank you very much. thank you, and I'm happy I can have some time for questions, and I love questions and asking hard questions. Yes?
So, right now, we're in the midst of controversy about public art. Rizzo mural, Rizzo statue, all the Confederate things and so forth. And time changes, and I guess art needs to change as well. And how do you deal with that whole question?
I think it's a great question. So, I think I'm someone who feels that some things need to go away. I mean, even with murals, I mean, they're not here forever. And so if you look at our collection of work we're creating every year, so I didn't say this in the presentation, but some of the things are temporary and some are permanent. So it's a mix, but nothing is really permanent, right? What are we talking, 15, 20 years? And I think it's okay we get attached to it. Like, I feel like when murals are deteriorated and we say they should go to mural heaven or we should fix it, like people go, you can't touch the mural. And I'm like, but of course we can and we should, and it's okay. Like, having that conversation is an important one. And then we get to history. And so, I'm a believer that we want reminders of what happened, like we shouldn't forget, but there are different ways that we don't have to forget, right? And we need to just be able to talk about it. So I'm going to tell you, for the Rizzo mural, I think we have 5 options. Option 1 is we keep it and contextualize it. We have scholars write about Rizzo, his complexity, and some people think he was great. So we write about that. There's a wall right next to the Rizzo mural. We do another mural right there that's about the market and who it is today. The market is like the crossroads of the world. We take it away. That's another option. 4th is that we cede over the ownership to, there's an Italian market organization, they love it, then they can maintain it. I think it's untenable for us to keep restoring it. So I think, but what we're trying to do now is have a conversation with civic leaders from this part of the city to discuss what we should do. Interestingly enough, well, maybe this is not so, it's very obvious, it's hard to engage people in the conversation because what they just want is for us to keep fixing it, but we're like drawing a line and saying, no, we really actually think that we need to do something else other than what we've just been doing. And that is a very uncomfortable place for some people to be, not everyone. And it's interesting to me, actually, how that doesn't represent everyone, that we're circling around now, trying to push a conversation. But I think we have to be quite tenacious. I think the Rizzo statue will eventually go away. They're looking at ideas right now, so I don't know where it goes. But I think that life is porous, and I think it's interesting. Mural art sits at the intersection of the public, the private, the civic, the social, the aesthetic, right? We're the nuance is important to us. And I think the nuance is important as it relates to history. So some things should stay, some things should go. We want to hold on to it. There are different creative ways to hold on to history so we never forget. Yes?
I came in a little bit late, so forgive me if you addressed this at the very beginning, but can you talk about what challenges you might anticipate in the coming years, budget or?
Sure. Yeah, I anticipate great challenge, actually. I think already our city budget is getting cut. The school district is going to face a deficit that's going to impact departments and how they work. It's more competitive now. There are nonprofits that are forming at the speed of light. It's a limited, the pie is just so big. I think that's a challenge. And I think I say this, the staff at Mural Arts, it's incumbent for us to be excellent. We have to distinguish ourselves by being excellent at everything we do and totally responsive, and there's just no room for mediocrity. We just can't, and we can't be neutral, and we have to be really invested in the life of the city in every way that we can be. I love the city. I feel like, in my next life, I probably would love to run for office. I love it, and I want to work hard on behalf of it. But I see that I think that for us is the biggest challenge, because remember when we started out, when I think back, not even the Wilson Good years, let's talk about the John Street years, or even the early Michael Nutter years. There was just so much more federal and state money around, and that impacts all of us, even if we get a little bit of it, because if we get a little bit of it, we're going to stretch it and leverage it and match it and stretch it. We raise 7 private dollars to every dollar the city gives us. So we're always like looking for that. But when you take that out of the equation, it's not just us. It's like all kinds of social service, like arts-based nonprofits. It's gonna be really, really hard. And it makes me so mad because there's no reason for this. It's like, I don't know why we don't have a state budget. I don't want to editorialize, I guess. I just think we should have a budget. I'm sorry.
Can you become an Instagram star? Instagram star?
Maybe there's a, that could be my next. Thank you, yes.
What exactly do professional artists do in these projects?
The professional artist?
Yes.
You mean besides getting paid by us?
No, I mean, what do they do recently, what the kids are doing in terms of doing actual art?
I'll take a good project. So let's take a case study. Can you all hear me if I'm not on the microphone? So, like, we dedicated a mural yesterday. That was part of a program, our Porch Light work at Kirkbride Center, which is a lockwood. Thanks. So the artist starts out by working very carefully, deliberately doing classes with the groups, with several groups, right? And so he did drawing, he did portraiture, he did a still life study, and he builds people up so they can think about more complex composition. He asks people what do they want to what do they want to think about. So they wanted a mural that was symbolic of resilience, and they wanted something that said "We matter." And he had them research quotes. So then they're also doing readings, and they're reading poetry. So it becomes multidisciplinary. And then he often connects with different therapists. So the person who's teaching writing, the music therapist, he'll bring in other people as they construct the composition. And then once they get a design together, then it goes through an approval process, and then they begin the painstaking work of actually creating it. Oh, this is Gabby. And I work together. Gabby backside. So anyway, you're going to pull up Kirkbride?
I was.
Oh, thank you. You're so smart. So that's what the artist does. The artist is in charge of everything from soup to nuts. They have to be able to work with a team of people, make sure the design has a cohesiveness, because you want it's in public space, so it has to be beautiful. Like, good work, good process. Like, aesthetically appealing, but it was profound. Like, check, check, check. Like, we need to be multitaskers at any given moment. And what was so interesting, yesterday, the artist got up there in front of 100 people and said, I'm getting introduced, but I want to be clear, this is our project. And everyone started cheering. And then the people in the neighborhood were there, and they start cheering. Because now it's community development, right? It's community development, it's social services, it's art making, it's education. It's like all those things in the pot, and that's what I love. I love to be able to, but the artists, I think people who are attracted to us, and it's a lot of artists we're hiring, they are like change agents. They are people totally devoted to like that, living that world of art and social change. Now they do their own work and they do private commissions, but many artists in the city of Philadelphia make a decent part-time living from working with us. So it is sort of like the WPA has come back to roost in Philadelphia, which makes me sad that the government doesn't see that this is like the WPA. Like, why don't we have it? Oh, we shouldn't start. Okay, who's next? Question, yes. Oh my God, I love the class. I should not have a second job, but it's so great. I want my students to understand how change happens, that it just doesn't happen top down, that you can be well-versed in theories of social change all you want, but if you don't have that practical sort of experience of working with commissioners and department heads and the mayor's office and fundraising and block captains and community leaders, like how things happen is very complex, and you need to, I'm going to call it authorship. You need to value and prize the authorship of the community, like their voice should rise, and the artist's voice has to rise. So where do you sort of step back, like a conductor, right? You want to be able just to touch it enough so you're sort of leading it along, but not too much, because you want it to have sort of this organic feel in order to create real change. How does change happen, right? In South Philly, we embedded ourselves over a year with these urbanists and designers and architects, and out of that came a conversation. People were tired of trash. People wanted the South Park School beautified. Midland Square Park renovated. But it didn't come from us. It came from them, and that's what I want the students to understand, how these things happen. It's a delicate process. And then, how do you go about dealing with all of that? So I bring in staff, block captains, it's like we do like case studies. It's fantastic. I mean, I wish when I was in college, I would have loved a class like that. And then they work on a project. And then we recruit them to work at Mural Arts. Yes?
Kirkbride mural, just for.
Oh yeah, here it is. It has some glass.
The feature about the murals is that murals have a sort of permanence or a semi-permanence about them. But lots of cities around the world have spent a lot of money on very transient things, such as, for me, the one which I didn't quite agree with is wrapping Pont Neuf in a blanket, which I don't know whether you saw that. In the middle of Paris, they wrapped the whole bridge in sheets. It must have cost a fortune to do. It did. But other cities suddenly put up red carrots in various parts of the city for several months. But these are transient things. And I wondered how you view the semi or the permanency of your program compared to some of these transient things, which also cost a lot of money.
Yes, they are very costly. So we'll never have money like that. Sadly, because if we did, we would invest it differently. So I would say it's about intent and goals. So our goals are a little different. And even when we do public art that is transient, because we have done some very temporary things, we have a very explicit goal that, like the lens through which we look out through the lens of art and social change. Is it going to somehow move the needle, stir a conversation, encourage a discourse? Like we did, we worked with a woman we're doing Float Lab with. 8 years ago, we did a project with her. It was called Light Drift. We did orbs along the river, and you could change the color from the shore. The point was, back then, it was probably 10 years ago, Schuylkill Banks was very empty. And William Penn Foundation wanted to see if art could build community. We know community can help build art, but could the reverse be true? So we tested it, but we do it really explicitly by having like programmatic things happening around the transient public art, right? So making sure there's some intention around it. 2 years ago with open source, Sam Durant built with Cyclone Fence, he built this maze in front of the Municipal Services Building to talk about mass incarceration. So we had programming there, we had statistics on the ground. We made it as educational and as impactful as possible. So we're going to come in like a B12 shot if we're doing that. But we're going to do that only a small portion of the time, and the rest of the time we really want to root ourselves in communities over longer periods of time, because that's how change happens. So you can fly in and fly out, but you better be really intentional about what you're doing. And then when you fly out, then you want to root yourself back in many different meaningful ways. Does that make sense?
Was wrapping Pont Neuf worthwhile?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was sort of interesting, but if I saw how much it cost, I might wince. I mean, I might go, I don't know. I mean, but I'm a big believer I like public art, right? I like the pedicabs that are going around, that's temporary. I think that some of our Monument Lab things are definitely temporary. Now, they weren't hugely, the whole exhibit it's a $2 million exhibit, but each artist, what they got, it was very reasonable commissions, but they're temporary, and there's a part of me that wishes they were permanent. But I know if it was permanent, we'd be talking about $10 to $20 million, and that's just not possible. So I just had to be real about that. But I'm glad Monument Lab is here, even if it's temporary, because we're being so intentional. We have 30 public programs. We have fabulous speakers. You should come to the last talk. The last talk is Michael Eric Dyson and Michael Kimmelman. Like, great! And we have all these artists are such deep thinkers, and hearing them talk, even like a few weeks ago, Hank Willis Thomas spoke at City Hall about the Afro pick. I mean, his grandfather was a Philadelphia police officer. His uncle was in the Black Panthers. He has such an interesting view of the world. I mean, it was like, oh my God, it's like gold coming out of his mouth. He goes, as a society, we need to be more visionary and less reactionary. I'm like, I love you. So I'm like, so anyway. So I'm saying, find it to be temporary, do it intentionally. Yes?
Is there any way that the monument art in Washington Square can be made? It's there, I've seen people interact.
People love it.
It's wonderful, it's there, it doesn't cost.
I know people are circulating an online petition to keep it. I love that. We're going to try. I'm going to work, I'm like, sort of stalking INHP and starting my attack I don't mean attack, you know what I mean by. Hello again, it's me. But I am trying for that and the Afro pick too. There people want the Afro pick to stay. Yes?
A couple of maybe related questions. I'm under the impression that there are some cities, maybe in this country, where what we used to call graffiti, isn't it? Where what we used to call graffiti is now valued as art. And I'd be interested in your comments about the movement to preserve graffiti as opposed to replace it with the kinds of things you're doing. On the one hand, on the other hand, I'm curious. This was to me spellbinding. I think it was a fabulous talk and it's a fabulous program. Are there cities where this would not work because property values are too high? For example, does this exist in New York City, where, according to folklore, there is no such thing as a bad neighborhood or a wall that won't become a huge development? I'd like to hear your view on whether Philadelphia was a unique laboratory for this to spring up.
Well, one thing. Thanks. So I would say I'd answer that. That's a complex question. Let me just take it one at a time. So we just got a grant from a foundation in New York to replicate our work. They fund models that they feel can be scaled. So that to me is a really good sign. And we're looking at a number of cities across the country. We've gotten requests from about 200 cities across America and about a dozen cities around the world. We've worked in a number of cities already, but we're going to create a formal civic institute and a laboratory here in the city that's part of Mural Arts, where we're looking at the field of public art and civic engagement. So I think it's actually a really good time, and many cities are open to it. If you look at where our work is in the city, it's everywhere, right? From Center City to the far northeast. So I think cities that are interested in art are vast. When I read the New York Times travel section, I'm enthralled by how many cities represent themselves by street art, by murals, by public art. What's happening now in the public art world is that graffiti, street art, muralism, and public art are all influencing and inspiring each other. They used to be genres that really stood alone and very much apart from each other. I find that you work with like a Swoon or Shepard Fairey, they come out of a graffiti tradition. They're not really graffiti artists. They're artists working in public space. When you talk to Steve Powers, you can't get a painting from Steve for under probably $50,000. He's the young man who did Love Letter. Like, he really, when you call him a graffiti artist, he's like, I'm not a graffiti artist. I mean, I work with text. I'm not a street artist, I'm a public artist. So I think that blurring is really good. So I think probably what I think is being preserved, I don't know if it's the tagging, but it might be some of the work by these original artists who started out with a graffiti-ish style, but have now evolved. Their own work has totally evolved, and yet there's something sort of historic and significant about it. One, because it's them, and two, because I think there's something important about that people want to keep alive. I mean, I feel, for our own practice, I mean, when we were anti-graffiti, we couldn't use spray, but now we do everything. I mean, we just did a fresco. We work with stained glass, we do things that are sculptural, we work with videographers, dancers, writers, so the sky is the limit. And that blurring of boundaries, I think, is really useful, and we try to just incorporate that. And I would like to think that the sky is the limit, just based on the number of cities that call us all the time. And New York, we did meet with the Bloomberg administration several times, and we were very close to signing a contract with them, but the New York mural program had a little fit. They were like, why Philly? And we were like, oh, you guys are poor losers. So it never happened, which is too bad, because the tunnel in Washington Heights just sat. No, nothing happened. So when we wanted to see, but here's the thing with us, we want to build capacity of the other cities. Like, we're working with the city of Atlanta right now. We don't want to it's not like Dunkin' Donuts where we open up a franchise. We want to sort of work there, influence the practice, and then move on. But I think, so I hope that there's always room for us to work everywhere. But I also get it in Manhattan, there's just so many buildings that are skyscrapers, there's not maybe that many walls. Although when I go to New York, I do see possibilities. But of course, I will admit, I am sort of an incessant wall hunter. I can't help myself. Anyway, other questions? Yes? think that eventually, like being diagnosed with lupus, when I was diagnosed, it's a long time ago, I was told you won't live long. And so it was so startling at a young age to sense my own mortality. You know, it was like shocking. And up until then, I would say that I feel my life had been pretty privileged and blessed. And then it just wasn't, right? And so I had to make peace with it. And it gave me a different perspective on life. And interestingly enough, I think when I came to Philly and started connecting with the graffiti writers, like I related to them. Because I suddenly I wouldn't have called myself then, but now looking back, an insider who felt like an outsider. So we all felt like outsiders, because I had a form of lupus systemic, internal organs, but also it was discoid, so it was scarring, and so I felt very self-conscious a lot. And so it was totally life-changing. And so I think I saw the young people who had enormous obstacles who were just overcoming them, that I felt like they were just naturally resilient, and the community leaders, and I thought, so what's my problem, right? So in a way, we all banded together with all of our shortcomings, our assets, our strengths, our weaknesses. We had this sort of sense of commonality. Like it was a very interesting bond that to this day, this happens all the time. Like I went to the gym early this morning and I went to Wawa and I ran into someone from I haven't seen him in forever. And he's like, oh my God, Jane! And they started talking about anti-graffiti because it was so present to him. He's those that changed my life. And he works for PGW and he was he just had all these memories that were vivid as if it were yesterday. So I think for me, that time period was life-changing and probably life-saving. Because I was deeply depressed. Because it was my whole life, as I knew it, shifted just like that. And I had to reconstruct it. And the young men that I worked with, the communities throughout the city, helped me build my life back. So I will always be grateful to anti-graffiti. Yes?
I just want to say thank you for this program. I went to school with Tim Spencer.
You did?
I did go to school with him, so I know him of him, and also volunteered Wilson Good office when first time he ran for mayor, like a receptionist in his office. But I'm so glad to be here today to see that the program has evolved and that it's still here. And I think the murals in Philadelphia are beautiful. Thank you.
I saw Wilson Good at the Richard Allen dedication, and he was like, I can't believe it's still going. He was so great. Wonderful. Probably LA. LA has struggled though because what happened is their city program lost all their city funding, and then there was a terrible graffiti problem. And many of the landmark murals were defaced and then painted out. And I know this from the series of interviews I did with the LA Times. And then murals were zoned as billboards. Clear Chapel did that. And so LA lost a generation of being able to paint murals, but that's gone now. We were part of a deposition to help lift it. They tried for a while, billboard companies tried to do that here in Philly, but there's no way. These billboard people are like, well, why shouldn't you go to zoning? We do. So I said, well, he goes, we're alike. I said, we're painting about hope and inspiration. You're doing gap ads. How are we alike? I see nothing. We have nothing in common. How is zero? It was funny, because I'm an artist, I want to be a lawyer. I'll argue with people all day long. Finally, they were just like, we give up. I'm like, yay!
I hate to interrupt, but it's time for one or two more questions.
Yeah, we have
if
to get a
there's
bunch
any
of stuff.
lingering questions in there. Speak up.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. I really enjoyed it.
Please feel free to come up. We have our Mountain Cloud newspaper. We have some materials about our program and our tours, and Jane also has her business card, so feel free to reach out.